Do you know what the 404 not found error means on a computer? It means that something has completely vanished from the system, leaving absolutely no trace, beyond any hope of recovery. And in the freezing winter of 1942, an army known as the Invincible Force of Europe encountered a permanent 404 error. They were completely wiped out inside the most brutal, ruined maze in human history. Welcome back everyone, it's me again, 404dev. On my channel, history is never just a bunch of sleepy text on a chalkboard. History is made of the most authentic, sharp, and breathtaking cinematic sequences. If you enjoy this style of storytelling, please don't hesitate to drop a like and subscribe to support 404dev in making more explosive videos. Your support is my biggest source of energy. And now close your eyes, imagine the bone-chilling cold of Russia and fasten your seatbelts. We are heading straight into the Battle of Stalingrad. To understand why this specific battle became the ultimate turning point World War II, we have to rewind a bit to the summer of 1942. At this moment, the massive clash of Germany versus Soviet Union was heavily leaning in favour of the German forces. Their blitzkrieg war machine was like a devastating hurricane. They swept across the endless fields of Europe, breaking every defensive line and shattering any army that stood in their way. Adolf Hitler's confidence was at an all-time high. He firmly believed that the Soviet Union was exhausted and just needed one final push before the entire empire collapsed. Germany's initial goal was to push south and capture the massive oil fields in the Caucasus region. Tanks and planes need oil to run. Without oil, the war machine would freeze in its tracks. It was a purely strategic objective. But then a specific name appeared on the map and changed everything. Stalingrad. A bustling industrial city stretching along the majestic Volga River. On paper, capturing the city would sever a crucial Soviet waterway, but for Adolf Hitler, Stalingrad meant something far greater. It carried the name of his ultimate rival, Joseph Stalin. Pride and sheer arrogance clouded the Führer's judgment. Sending an army in there was no longer a standard military calculation. It was a psychological strike. It was like kicking down the door of your enemy's living room, smashing everything inside, and planting your victory flag right in the middle of the house. Hitler wanted the whole world to see that the city named after the Soviet leader had been brought to its knees. In August 1942, the campaign began. The sky over Stalingrad turned pitch black, not from storm clouds, but from thousands of German Luftwaffe bombers roaring overhead. The order was given to flatten all resistance. Thousands of tons of bombs rained down. Towering apartment buildings, massive steel factories, and busy streets were all turned into a giant sea of fire. The flames burned so brightly that people could read a newspaper at night from dozens of kilometres away. The city was shattered into pieces. When German General Friedrich Paulus led his 6th Army into the area, he looked upon a horrifyingly desolate landscape. It didn't even look like a city anymore. Paulus was convinced that after such catastrophic destruction, no one could possibly survive to hold a rifle. Victory seemed to be resting comfortably in the palm of his hand. But Hitler and Paulus had made a fatal mistake, a mistake that would be written into every military textbook for generations to come. By bombing heavily fortified buildings into massive piles of rubble, they accidentally destroyed their own greatest advantage. German tactics relied on the rapid movement of tanks and armoured vehicles across wide, open spaces. Now those proud tanks became useless armoured coffins. They couldn't climb over mountains of debris that were meters high. They couldn't manoeuvre in narrow alleys blocked by twisted concrete and steel. The destroyed city had transformed into the most perfect defensive fortress for the Soviet army. On the other side of the front line, General Vasily Chuikov was tasked with defending the city. He didn't have a massive fleet of tanks, nor did he possess overwhelming air superiority, but he was a master of psychological warfare and adaptation. Chuikov saw right through the German weakness. He knew that if they fought from a distance, German firepower would crush his men. So he issued one of the coldest and most ruthless orders in the history of urban warfare. It was the tactic of hugging the enemy. Soviet soldiers were ordered to stay so close to the Germans that the distance was no more than a grenade throw. The command was crystal clear: fight at a distance where the enemy can hear your heartbeat. This tactic instantly paralysed the German strength. German bombers and artillery didn't dare to fire for fear of killing their own troops. From this point on, the Battle of Stalingrad turned into a literal nightmare. The Germans called it Rattenkrieg, the War of the Rats. There were no more heroic charges across open plains. This was a brutal struggle inside every sewer, every dark basement, and every shattered staircase. Soldiers from both sides fought over every single square metre. There were buildings where the first floor was held by Germans, the second floor by Soviets, and they shot at each other through holes in the ceiling. You could fight all day just to capture a kitchen, only to be pushed back out into the living room by nightfall. The tension was absolute. There was zero room for weakness. When talking about resilience in this battle, no history documentary can skip over Pavlov's house. It was originally just an ordinary 4-story apartment building in the middle of the city. But under the command of Sergeant Yakov Pavlov, a small squad of soldiers turned it into an impenetrable fortress. The area around the building was heavily mined, machine guns were positioned at every window, anti-tank weapons were mounted on the roof. This building guarded a vital square, making it impossible for the Germans to advance. Day after day, month after month, German tanks, artillery and infantry continuously attacked Pavlov's house, but every single wave was pushed back. The building shook, the walls crumbled, but the men inside never took a step back. It is said that the Germans lost more men trying to take this tiny building than they did capturing the entire city of Paris. They proved a universal truth. Bricks and mortar can crumble to dust, but human willpower never does. And while Paulus was blindly pouring all his focus and manpower into fighting for every blood-soaked inch of dirt in the city centre, he had no idea a massive storm was brewing on the outside. The Soviets had not abandoned Stalingrad. They were quietly assembling 1 million soldiers, thousands of tanks and artillery, hiding in the snow-covered forests and steppes. In November 1942, Operation Uranus began. This was a stroke of strategic genius. Instead of directly attacking the elite German forces inside the city, the Soviets hit the flanks. These positions were guarded by Germany's allied forces, the Romanian and Hungarian armies, who were poorly equipped and suffered from low morale. In just a matter of days, the defensive lines on both flanks completely collapsed. The two massive pincers of the Soviet army closed shut. The German Sixth Army was entirely locked in. Over 250,000 German soldiers, the same men who proudly marched into the city, were now trapped inside a cage of their own making. Paulus immediately requested permission to break out and save his men. Any rational general would have done the same, but Adolf Hitler refused. His ego wouldn't allow him to admit defeat. He ordered his troops to stand their ground to the last man, promising that the Luftwaffe would drop enough supplies to feed the entire army. It was a cruel death sentence. The German Air Force couldn't even come close to delivering the hundreds of tons of daily supplies needed. Then, the real Russian winter arrived, the coldest, most merciless general of nature. Temperatures plummeted to -30 degrees Celsius. Freezing winds howled through empty window frames. No warm coats, no heating fuel, no ammunition, and most terrifying of all, no food. Starvation tore at them. The once undefeated army was reduced to chewing on leather belts and drinking melted snow mixed with mud. The freezing cold jammed their weapons. Soldiers collapsed not from enemy bullets, but because their bodies slowly froze solid in the dark. They were frozen by the blind ambition of a leader sitting thousands of miles away. By late January 1943, everything had reached its absolute breaking point. To prevent Paulus from surrendering, Hitler promoted him to the rank of Field Marshal. Why? Because in German military history, no Field Marshal had ever been taken alive. Hitler wanted Paulus to take his own life. But Paulus chose a different path. Watching his men die slowly in agony, he decided to ignore the order. In early February 1943, the gunfire finally stopped over the ruins. Paulus walked out of his dark bunker and officially surrendered. The battle was over. A thorough Stalingrad Battle Explained video will show you a harsh reality. Victory doesn't always smile upon the side with the bigger tanks or the most bullets. Sometimes victory belongs to the side that can endure the pain just 1 second longer than their enemy. This battle broke the spine of the German army, completely shifted the global balance of power, and launched the Soviet counteroffensive straight toward Berlin. Thank you for patiently joining 404 Dev and turning the pages of this history written in blood and tears. If you found this video engaging and valuable, leaving a like and subscribe is the greatest reward you can give me. It's the motivation that keeps me awake all night creating more high-quality videos. History remembers who won, but rarely talks about what it took to get there. What would you have done in that situation? Let me know in the comments. Goodbye, and see you in the next videos.